It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, November 26th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content. It's not sure if the glass is half full or half empty from this one, but it sure was a fun game.
Yeah, sometimes you get your roll, sometimes you get snake eyes.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit fanduel.com to get started. And to keep up with our latest episode and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on all your favorite socials, including Blue Sky. And of course, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, yeah, I should have gone with the gambling metaphor like you did in the opener there, touche. But, this game honestly did feel like a roll of the dice,
It
even though the
was.
Flyers were up 3-0 at one point. Given who this Vegas team is, who they have out there, I just really feel like it was still anybody's game, even at that point.
No, and that's fair to say. I mean, look, we know Vegas is missing some key players, but they're a team that is used to playing like this. Like, this is their brand of hockey. No matter who it is, they plug them in. This is the way they play. And they didn't get discouraged at all being down 3-0.
No,
Matter of fact, you almost kind of wonder if they were just waiting for the second period. I know it's
just
just like that's the kryptonite of this team. And boy,
well,
it really happened again.
yeah, it's interesting. So the shots were 19-7 Vegas, and the goals it was like 3-2 in the second period. So,
Right.
on the surface and in the results, sure, it looks like Vegas had a very clear advantage in that period. But if you look at the underlying numbers, the high danger chances, 7-4 Flyers, scoring chances, even at 12. So it wasn't like the Flyers weren't getting
No,
opportunity
they were getting
in that
chances too. It
period.
was it was exchanging. There's no question. But it's just that Vegas was putting them in. Like, end of the
Yeah.
day, they were putting them in, and we knew that, and we talked about it, that this would be a tough third period. Like, the way this third
Yes.
period was going to be is it's going to be a checking period. It's going to be physical. This is the way Vegas plays. You have to outlast them. And that game was physical, man. That's one of the more physical games I've seen this year. And, on both sides, but guys were getting tattooed. So, it's something that definitely took something out of both teams. But here's the thing, though, and this is why I always stress for drafting position. Now, granted, Vegas didn't draft Jack Eichel, but Jack Eichel is the kind of guy you want to draft, that type of player, because that is a skill level that just doesn't exist on the Flyers, even in Michkov. Doesn't exist, and you could see it.
Yeah, and obviously Eichel's been around a while now, and so he's
Yes.
developed a lot of that skill,
Yeah.
and up-leveled his game again, especially since the surgery and whatnot.
Yes.
I think that Buffalo fans would be very upset to hear you talk about Jack Eichel like that,
Well,
because they didn't get to see it to some degree because of the injury woes.
yeah, I think that's fair. The one thing I always told Buffalo fans, even about Jack Eichel, like, is if you were ever in the locker room with him, this is a guy that just wants to win. He would be disappointed at every loss, like, not just disappointed, like heartbroken. Every loss, like, this is a guy that just wants to win, and it's
Yep,
good to have that kind of guy on the team. Not to say the Flyers don't. Konechny is like that. He just doesn't have the skill level that a Jack Eichel has. So that's what I'm saying. You have to get some of those guys. That's why they won a cup.
right.
That's with Jack Eichel.
Totally. I think, looking at the overtime play, that was one of the most fun overtimes
Oh
we've
yeah,
seen.
that was fun.
I think that, the back and forth of it, the Flyers did get that power play opportunity and they did get their chances in it. I think, they were just missing by inches. They were hitting the post. Samsonov was making great stops. I think there was like a combined thing to make the Flyers not be able to finish in that. And unfortunately, like, and that's where like Travis Sanheim in particular stepped up a little bit more.
He
I
did.
mean, he had a very good game overall, but he wasn't like super noticeable until the third period and
Right.
overtime. And when he really kicked it into another gear, and the fact that he has that other gear is pretty tremendous.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been this big improvement in Travis Sanheim in the last year and a half. We've seen it. It's nice to see. So that that's something that's terrific. Morgan Frost put on a nice show too. Again,
Yep.
this is why we said having him on the bench just doesn't make sense. The team's not better without him. Like you need that guy in there. But I am going to continue to say Owen Tippett should not be on the top line. He is just at
Well,
the point he may have gotten shots on net, he may have had a good move or something, but it's just he's holding up Michkov. Like if you watch some of those plays where he is looking for him, puck goes off his stick, the shot's not exactly right. Like Michkov could have more points if he had a guy on his line that was really like a goal scorer. And right now, him and Forster are not those guys.
right. And the thing is that that's not the first thing I would say about Owen Tippett for tonight. I think, and this is not his fault. I would not, in any circumstances, have put him out there for the shootout.
No, I agree with that too.
I think that even though he has had shootout success in the past, and I do not deny that, I think that the way he played in this particular game, and he had, what was it? He had 8 shot attempts in this game, 6 of them unblocked, right? So he
Hmm.
got 6 unblocked shots through
Which is a
and
lot
nothing, which is
and
a
nothing.
lot, and nothing. And I feel like that is enough of a pattern in this game that he wasn't gonna score in the
Right,
shootout.
but this is
And I would have
where
put Frost out there.
we all would have. Like, we all were talking about that. I was getting texts about it. Totally agree. The issue with this one is this is where the coach, either John Tortorella or somebody, decides we're going to put Tippett out there because we're just going to make him score, and this is going to break. This is going to break his schneid. But he did score not that long ago, and that didn't do it. And this wasn't
Right.
going to do it either. And I think that's where sometimes you can't hope against hope. Like you should put in the more skilled guy. And Frost was having a game. Like he was
Right.
clearly the most skilled guy other than Michkov on the Flyers. Like he was. And he was making plays. Yeah, he should have been in there.
And he has moves. He has
Oh,
shootout moves.
absolutely. Well, we saw the moves in overtime.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. So, I really feel strongly about that. And
Hmm.
again, that's not Owen Tippett's fault. That's a
No, no,
coaching
no. He's
decision.
got to do what he's got
So,
to do. They put him in that position to
right.
try it.
And yeah, he did. And I'm not really mad at him. I'm just like
No,
mad at the circumstances of it
yeah.
all. But I do think that, there is a point to be made, like you said, about, he really needs to sit. He just needs
He
to
needs a
sit.
game off. Like they do
Yeah.
this for everybody, but they won't do it with this guy. And I don't get it. He needs
Yeah.
the day off in the worst way. You could see the struggle on his face.
Yep. Oh, before we close the loop on Morgan Frost, he got power play time. That's what we said they
Yes.
needed to do, and I think he looked pretty
He
good
looked good out
in
there.
in the minute.
They
They
didn't get
didn't
it
have a
done,
ton of
but he
time.
right. He didn't have a ton of time, but when he was out there, he was looking good. I agree.
Yep,
He needs to still be out there
absolutely.
for that. But there's a
Emil
lot of guys
Andrae,
not pulling their weight. Andre was great. I
first
again,
NHL goal, love that.
first NHL goal, terrific. Always fun to see. We talk. It's a shame he won't be able to like fully feel great about it because
I hate
guys are.
that.
I know
Hate that.
guys are taught to like not be able to celebrate their first goal because they lost the game. He'll take a picture with the first goal puck, and that's fine. But he won't be able to really boast about it. But he's really been terrific. He's been one of the Flyers' best defensemen since coming up, and that hasn't changed. So good for him. He's really taken the bull by the horns with that.
Yeah, Helge Garans obviously made a very terrible mistake on the game time goal. Or I wouldn't call it a mistake, he just got beat, right?
Yeah. I mean, I saw Konechny with bad turnovers. I mean, I
Yep.
don't know what the number was. The
Sean
Flyers had a
Couturier taking a bad penalty to take him out of even being a
right.
penalty killer, that
Yeah.
was
They had a
awful.
boatload of bad turnovers. I mean,
Yeah.
so we could talk about Gronz and we could talk about 5 other players too. But I thought
Sure.
Gronz otherwise would look pretty good. I don't think he
Yep.
looks out of place at all. I think he looks pretty good. But
Oh, for
yeah,
sure.
lots of turnovers.
Right. So, like I said, glass half full or half empty. There was a lot of really, really good things in this game, some not
Yep.
so good things in this game that led to them ultimately losing. But you pick up a standings point, and several guys, I think, pick up some confidence. Morgan Frost, I think, is pretty much going to stick around for the time being,
I
I would
can't
say.
imagine he doesn't. Yeah, he has to. Now, if he's
Yeah.
part of that
So,
Yerichek trade, like we'll do a whole show. Like I'll just, it's not going to be a pretty show if he gets traded. I'm just going to say that. I think people know that, but whatever.
right.
I expect that possible shoe to drop. I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if that happens. We'll see if anything else happens. In the meantime, it is Tuesday, so we always check in with our prospects in Lehigh Valley, and we're going to do that and catch up on that Eurocheck situation coming up next. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this NHL season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. And PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNHL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. PrizePicks, run your game. On tomorrow's show, we will be previewing the matchup against the troubled Nashville Predators, which is going to be a real interesting discussion there. Plus, we'll have our mailbag as we do each and every Wednesday. So get those questions in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com, send us a message on any of our socials at lockedonflyers, or comment on our YouTube channel. And just a quick programming note with the American Thanksgiving holiday this week, we are going to have a Thursday episode that'll recap that Preds game. Plus, we're going to look at the history of Black Friday games for the Flyers, which is sordid and troubled at times. So that is going to be fun. Plus, on Friday, we are going to have an episode after the Flyers Rangers Black Friday game. So stay tuned for all of that. Before we get to Phantoms Tuesday, there's a little bit of a David Yurichek update, and we've been hearing all of these tidbits mostly via Elliot Friedman, right?
Right.
And he seems to be the inside baseball guy on
Yep.
this story here. And on 32 Thoughts yesterday, he said that basically the return that Columbus is looking for is another player that hasn't popped yet, which the Flyers have a few of those.
Right. They do. It could be Frost. It could be Zamula. It could be something like that. Yeah.
He did mention Nashville, Minnesota, and the Flyers as a possibility. He said that there were rumors out there about the Oilers, but he doesn't think that will
No.
work and that the Oilers don't have the right guys. I agree with
Yeah,
that
I agree with that
assessment
too.
there. David Yurichek did play 2 games for the Cleveland Monsters in the AHL this past weekend, and no points on Saturday, but on Sunday he had a goal and an assist, including that goal being the game-winning overtime goal against Milwaukee. So, I think he's trying to prove himself down there.
Yeah, and he needs to just stay down there. Like whatever team gets him, keep him down there. Let him have a really good season. He's been bounced around a lot. That'll fix him.
I think it has a high probability of succeeding, and I would love to see David Yurichek as a Lehigh Valley Phantom,
Oh
wouldn't
yeah,
you?
they could use that.
Heading into our Phantoms Tuesday report, as we do each and every Tuesday here, the Phantoms had a 2-game weekend this past week. Not great results, I will say. They were shut out by Providence on Friday, 3-0. And then on Saturday, also facing Providence up in Rhode Island, a 2-1 overtime loss. So they got a point out of that one, but still they came away with no wins for the weekend. And because of everything else going on in the Atlantic Division, that knocks them all the way back down to seventh. They had been in fourth at one point. We're down to fifth last week, and now they're down to seventh. In their last 10, they're 5-3-2. uh, it's tough because there are some positive things I can say about these games, but ultimately, when you don't come away with the win and you can't keep pace, like, it's still a problem, right?
It's a problem. Honestly, the biggest problem from a standing standpoint that I could see is uh, they only have 3 regulation wins,
Yeah,
and that's a problem. They have to start figuring out how to win in regulation. So, and again, you can't say, well, hey, Russ, look, the Flyers have some of their top prospects. Doesn't matter. When you sign on for the AHL, that coaching gig, that's part of the gig. Everybody knows it. There are teams that pull players all the time. Sometimes they get pulled weekly. So these are things you have to deal with. I don't think they have the most talented roster. We've talked about that. And maybe Alan McCauley would have to answer to that someday. But in the interim, you got to work with what you got.
right. So, speaking of those roster moves, we do know that Anthony Richard was sent back down to the Phantoms on Saturday, but it literally happened that day. So he did not
Right.
play that night, which is 100% to be
Yes.
expected. If you recall from last week, Etu Makaniemi was injured in net, and the update on him is that he has a sports hernia and will have surgery, so he's out 3 to 4 months, which
That's
is
a terrible thing. Uh,
just tragic for him.
Tragic for him, tragic for the Flyers goaltending situation. It's getting bad there. I feel
Yeah.
bad
So
for the
part
guy. I do.
I know it's just brutal because having an injury history has been part of the problem with him, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So Parker Gahagen was called up from Reading, and he played on Saturday. Cal Peterson played the Friday game. We'll get into that a little bit,
I mean,
but
good for Gahagen, man. He's Johnny on the spot. He's
I
always there
know
for them.
he is. And he's reliable. He is
He is
like old
reliable.
faithful
Yeah, he is old
in,
faithful.
for this team. Now they did lose that game in overtime, and we'll get into the where's, what's, and whys of it. But I think ultimately, he does the job he's asked to do most
Yep.
of the time, and that's all you can ask for an AHL like level goaltender here. I will say that in terms of scratches of note to look at, J.R. Avon was scratched on Saturday. And, for a 3-game weekend, sure. I'm not sure I would like notice that or be upset by it because guys need rest sometimes and there's a lot
Mhm.
of bodies there, right? But in a 2-game weekend, for him to get scratched without any real indication, at least that I heard from the broadcast, that there's an injury situation there. And not only was he scratched on Saturday, but he played on the fourth line on Friday, and that is a bad sign, right?
Yeah, he's not a fourth line guy. So clearly it's a
Mm-mm.
demotion and they're trying to spark him. And okay, I mean, yeah, he should be doing better. No question.
Yeah. Now, on the flip side, the good news is that Massimo Rizzo returned to the lineup. So happy about that.
Yeah.
It feels like we've been waiting forever. And if you can believe it, this was his debut with the Phantoms just because of all the injury
Craziness.
situation he had, coming out of the college season last year. And then this year, he started out with appendicitis and had been recovering from the abdominal surgery. So good to see him check into the lineup this weekend. Now, understanding that he's got to ramp up, it 100% made sense for him to be on that fourth line, but he
Right.
played both games. And I
Okay.
think that's a good sign.
It is a good sign. I mean, again, he's a guy that even though he turns 24 in June, he played 3 years in college. He went the BCHL route, so that was going to be a little bit of a longer route. So you have to have more patience with him. So like he needs 1 or 2 AHL seasons now because
Right.
of all these, the setbacks and everything. He's never really been able to get on track. So we don't really know what he could do yet.
The broadcast talked to him. Bob Rochuk had a conversation with him, prior to checking in, and he described himself as a creative playmaking guy.
Mhm.
And from what I saw in these 2 games, I mean, and I knew that from his
Yeah, we
college
knew that
time,
also
right?
from camp. We at least got to see a little of
Yeah.
him. Yeah.
Absolutely, but you could really see some of that come out sporadically in these 2 games, and I think that, for him trying to just get his feet wet again and get back out there, I think he did, pretty well. He wasn't nervous about getting back out there. It seemed like he was just like, "No, it's hockey, that's what I do, so I'm just gonna go out there and play." Interestingly, on Saturday, he got some 4-on-4 time, when there was an extended thing, and he was out there with Ethan Samson and Ole Lixell. So that shows some confidence, right? That he's a playmaker that can maybe get it to Lixell to score. They didn't, but nonetheless, he was
Right.
given
Yeah,
that
they need
opportunity.
someone to spark Ole, and yeah, Rizzo is a lot stronger than he was a year ago too. So that whole package of being a little better playmaker, being strong on the puck, those things could really help Lehigh.
Yes, and he was also out there on Saturday to start the overtime with, Ben Gleason and Ole Lixell,
Okay,
and I think
that's
that's
good.
a really good
Yeah, if
combination
they
to
get
start. Now,
a connection going with Lixell, I would like that.
yeah, so I like the thought process here. The
Yeah,
execution wasn't quite there yet, and
yeah.
obviously they lost in overtime in that game, and, I believe it was like a combination of Rizzo and Lixell on a board battle with 2 of the Providence guys that they just lost the board battle, and it led to a
In
breakaway the other
overtime, you
way.
lose one board battle, it's over
Yeah.
sometimes. So
So, it wasn't great for sure, but also I think, they had some quality puck movement prior to that, a lot of solid time in the Providence zone. I think there's some potential here to eventually get Rizzo and Lixell on the same line, and I like that.
yeah. No, I like the thinking of that. And Rizzo's got some gifts, and we'll see now, give him a few weeks, a few months, and we'll see, what they have. But I think he'll provide some offense for them because their offense is sagging.
Right, and so we're gonna get more into that and what the key guys are up to, special teams and all that coming up next.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get 150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play by play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I still go with Green Bay over the Dolphins. Miami doesn't like it in Green Bay, it's cold. Just visit fanduel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's fanduel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
So the other goings on in Lehigh Valley, obviously in a 2-game weekend to only score 1 goal over the course of those 2 games is not great. The 1 goal was scored by Ethan Sampson, a defenseman, on Saturday, so none of the forwards had any goals this
Crazy bad.
weekend.
That's crazy bad.
Crazy bad. Yeah, I thought Sampson had a solid game on Friday too. Like both games he
He's
played
playing pretty
pretty
good.
well.
He is. We'll
Yeah,
use
and
him as a positive for sure.
yes, and hopefully Anthony Richard's return will help in this
It
department,
has to. How could
moving
it not?
forward this week, right? So I really felt like after they got shut out on Friday, and I know it was 3-0, but one of them was an empty net goal, and then one of the 2 goals that Providence scored was a power play goal. So I'm not going to put too much on Cal Peterson. I'll put a little bit on him, but like not too much in that game. But you would think that the remit would be after getting shut out on Friday, you got to come out on the attack, right? On the second game against the same team.
Right.
Well, they didn't. And if you look at their shot totals on Saturday, they had 30 shots on goal on Friday, went down to 23
Mm,
on Saturday. And, in the third period, especially when they were, it was a 1-1 game, I guess, at
okay.
that point.
Yeah.
You know, there was just no, I think, extended attack. I feel like they were getting chances, but not enough, in my opinion. I just felt like, they weren't getting enough on net.
Yeah, I mean, line shuffling doesn't always work, and so you figure since they're playing the same team, there could have been some good game planning the second game because you already know what you saw. You already have video to look at. Sounds like they didn't really take advantage of that.
No, and then Parker Gahagen played really well. The Providence Bruins spent a ton of time in the offensive zone for them, so the Phantoms defensive zone in the 3rd. Like, the shots on goal that Providence got, only 7. I don't think that reflects the chances they got
Right,
or the shot attempts that they got
right.
either. Like, there was extended opportunities there for Providence, and Gahagen held up really well under the circumstances, and then it was just, that overtime scenario that I just talked about. But yeah, I think that's another thing where, Lappy said that they generally played well on Friday, but just couldn't get one to go, but then didn't keep up the same kind of pressure on Saturday.
Right. I mean, so generally playing well, it didn't even carry over. So there's an issue there. And they got to nip it in the bud because, like I said, if they don't start winning games of regulation, the AHL is a little easier to make it in the playoffs than the NHL, but still, you don't want to fall out too far.
Right, and I would say the exception to that, even though he did not get on the board, was Ale Lixell. He had 5 shots on goal in each of the 2 games, and
Okay.
I think he was very noticeable, putting on the pressure, and again, I loved it when he was out there with Rizzo. Rizzo passed to him a couple times, when they had those chances in
Yeah.
special team situations, and I love the combo, and I think if they could develop some chemistry, there's some potential there. But speaking of the power play, 1 for 5 for the weekend. They're still 2nd in the AHL on the power play given the strength of their earlier action, but, they could be doing a little better on that front, I would
I'm
say.
sure they could. I mean, there's a lot that could be going doing better. And, again, I would think that the end of this year, they have to reevaluate how Ian LaPerriere is doing with them because now, like, let's say 2.5 years, if you want to say 2.5 years into the rebuild, because if you want to say for a little while, they totally ignored the rebuild. Okay. Um, but the AHL is a big part of that, a big function of that. And you have to have success down there to have any success up with the big club
Yep.
because that's what's going to fuel the big club. Like you can go look at most of the times, and you follow the AHL even more than me, but a lot of times when the AHL club is good, eventually that does get the rising tide thing, and it does get to the NHL, and those players help tremendously.
Sure, look at Laval right
Right?
now. They're killing it out
Yeah,
there, and you look at what Montreal is, and you're like, this is the
getting
future. It's
closer,
there,
getting closer. Yeah, and that's part of that development. So they have to start getting that. And it's not that they haven't made the playoffs or anything, but they've just been a fringe team even doing that. They have to at some point there has to be a better stamp on this or they're going to have to make a change.
Yeah, I think so. It had been 3 straight games without a power play goal until they got the one this weekend. So at least they're kind of back on the horse on that front,
Right.
but,
Right.
could be doing better. The penalty kill was 4 for 5 for the weekend. They're 14th in the AHL on that. So I think they're slowly getting a little
It's a
better
little
on that
better.
front. But again, I think there's a little bit more they could be doing on that front as well. As far as goaltending, Cal Peterson had 18 saves on 20 shots on Friday, and I think with Cal Peterson, that's not enough action for him. I think he needs more to be more consistent because now again, like I said, one of
You
them
may
was a
be
power
right, but
play
he's a
goal.
veteran at this point. Like I'm not making any excuses for him. He
Yeah,
listen, this is his whole
it's
career.
not an excuse, it's an
Yeah. Okay.
explanation.
I mean, because this is his career. Like, he basically was taken
Right.
as part of a cap dump. Last year he was serviceable. This year he's a little less than serviceable. He's basically going to be an AHL goalie forever. If this is the way this year is going to go, and not a lot of teams are going to be lining up for him next year. So unless he really gets it together, like, he's it's just not going to be great for him in the future.
Right, and, given that this is his last year, I think A, it's bad for him, B, it's bad for the Phantoms, and C, it's bad for Flyers goaltending depth to
Right.
not have a solid guy
Right.
in that
Because
spot,
it's not
right?
helping the other prospects like really
Nope.
develop if goaltending is going to, take them out of games.
Absolutely. So, I think that it's something to keep an eye on. Like I said, Parker Gahagen was real solid in net, 25 saves on 27 shots
Yeah,
on
good for him on,
Saturday.
short notice. Good for him.
Totally, totally. So, yeah, I think, there isn't a lot to talk about highlight-wise just because they didn't score at all. Samu Tuamala's point streak came to an end in that shutout on Friday, and then he didn't get on the board on Saturday.
He's just not
Us
scoring enough. Like, he has to get
yeah,
goals. Points, different story. He's a goal scorer. He has to score goals.
right. So, other than like Ethan Samson, who stood out to me, I think, Ben Gleason is really taking to his role there. I think he's going to be a defensive leader for the Phantoms. That's good. But obviously, no points from Oscar Eklund, no points, from Abels. Just a slow weekend. And I think that, despite some good chances from a lot of these guys, and I think we just got to look ahead and hope that next weekend is better and then maybe start to get a little more nervous after next weekend.
Yeah, but you can't even use like tryptophan as an excuse for their listless last couple of games. Now they're going to have that in their system soon.
Right. Well, it's going to be a very tough weekend, so I would hope they would stick to whatever nutritional plans they're on, because Wednesday they are at Hartford, which is not going to be easy.
So
Then
you're
they're
telling
playing.
them they should eat like tofu turkey, that whatever they call that? Is that what you're saying?
They eat whatever they're being told to eat. I don't know what that is.
What are you telling them to eat on? If you're the person in charge, I'm asking you, what are you telling them to eat on
I think
Thanksgiving?
you have the turkey, but you don't have
Okay.
the mashed potatoes with a ton of butter in it,
All
right?
right. All right. Fair enough.
Yeah, so they're at Hartford on Wednesday. Then on Friday, they face Hershey, which is always a challenge. And then I just talked about Laval, who's absolutely storming through the AHL right
Yeah.
now. That's who they face on Saturday.
That's not great.
Third game of the weekend. Now they do have the Thursday off, so it's not 3 days in a row, but still, Hershey to Laval, that is a tough, tough back to
So
back.
they're
So
traveling the day after American Thanksgiving? Is that what it is?
they'll probably travel back after the game on Wednesday, have
Right.
Thursday off, and then they're
Right.
home against Hershey on
Okay.
Friday.
Oh, okay. So they're home on Friday. So yeah, they're gonna have their bellies full. They better watch it.
All right. That'll do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow to talk Flyers versus Preds and have our mailbag. So let us know your questions. You can contact us on any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey, become a fantasy hockey expert, and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.